What's going on, fight fans? It's your host Sebastian, and welcome back to the Boxing Tip. Now, I was stumbling around on the internet, and a few different media sites, boxing media sites, have announced that the fight between Canelo and Chavez Jr. has been announced. So I figured I'd make a video to kind of spread the word on it. Now, as you guys remember, in my last video, I talked about whether or not this fight was a significant fight for the sport of boxing. And I told you, maybe for, your diehards, you might not see this fight as being like a whole, like being majorly, significant in terms of the competition in boxing, being that Canelo is one of the top fighters in the sport. Chavez Jr. was on his way to being one of the top fighters in the sport, but given some discipline issues and I think his just overall commitment to the sport, lacking his commitment to the sport, kind of really watered him down in a way. He's not what he could have been, in my opinion, but nevertheless, it doesn't really take too much away from this fight, for me at least. And I like this fight for a couple of different reasons. For the casual fan, for one, it really brings a lot of attention to the sport, for casual boxing fans, or people who don't watch boxing religiously, or enough to really know what's going on in the sport, but they do know a few big names like Canelo, like Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, like people who know the really big names in the sport. But it's a good opportunity to really draw in some of that casual, some of those casual watchers, and maybe, you never know, it might just convert some of those casuals into turning them into, more dedicated boxing fans or more diehard boxing fans. And I like the idea of that because, I push that slogan, introduce somebody to boxing. We can never have enough fans in the sport. And I say that for a reason. For one, because I feel like boxing is a great sport and should be shared with everyone. If people don't like it, then I understand. It's not their thing. But for the, for the people who are really neutral about boxing, they have a chance to really become more, to really pay more attention to the sport. That's, and I push that slogan for that reason, of course, but I also push that slogan because the more fans we have in the sport, the better the sport does, either financially or just, it just helps the sport give us more of what we want to see. Even though I feel like this fight isn't the most significant fight in terms of competition, like in a sport, and with boxing being a sport and that type of perspective, but nevertheless, it presents a good opportunity to really draw back some attention to boxing, and I feel like that is a very positive thing and something that boxing could always use. You know what I'm saying? Even if it's not for pay-per-view buys, just people paying attention to the sport in general. You know what I'm saying? And this fight has some meaning to me. I'm Mexican. My father is from Mexico. I was born here in America, obviously, but my father is from Mexico, So growing up, I was exposed to a lot of Mexican fighters, like, even though he's Mexican-American, like Oscar De La Hoya, Chavez Sr., Marco Antonio Barrera, Eric Morales, just to name a few, some really, really great Mexican fighters. So I do support Mexican fighters, not just because of my heritage, obviously, but because it's entertaining to watch. Even if they aren't the most competitive fighters out there, it's still very entertaining to watch. And and that is something that you do look for from boxing, regardless of how diehard you are. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, I could watch two guys get into a scrap and fucking love it, but I could watch some technicians get in the ring, and even though it might seem lackluster to other people, to me it's exciting because I'm just waiting for the next move. I'm waiting for the next strategical move, the next positioning, the next punch. You know what I'm saying? There's two aspects to boxing that I appreciate very much. The technicality, the art of the sweet science, and I enjoy the entertainment as well. And I think a lot of boxing fans can agree with me on that one. Not all the time we're satisfied, in an entertainment sense, but we do like what we see in front of us. But never, just to kind of get that out the way, like I said, it has meaning to me being a Mexican American, my father is from Mexico, and my, when it comes to my heritage, it is an important fight for me, obviously, because we have two fighters who are from Mexico, represent their country, in a global sport like boxing. And I've always had curiosities of who the better boxer was between the two. Now, this is a chance to kind of get my answer that I've had since I've started watching these guys, a long time ago. Back when these guys used to fight on fucking like Unimas and like Telemundo and like Solo Boxeo, or just, stuff like that, or even, when Canelo wasn't headlining cards on HBO and shit, you know what I'm saying? So I had a curiosity about this fight before talks of this fight even happened. So obviously, yeah, I'm very satisfied that this fight is going to happen. You know what I'm saying? And I encourage everybody to be happy that this fight is going to happen, because it's almost guaranteed to be an entertaining fight. Even if you don't think it's a very significant fight, in terms of the sport as boxing as a whole, or it's not really going to distinguish anything major in boxing, but I guess in some sort of ways it does, because, being that Canelo is regarded as a top fighter in the sport, we get to see how he does at a bigger weight, because the fight is supposed to, I think the weigh-in limit is like 164.5 or something like that. So we're actually seeing Canelo Alvarez skip middleweight. The middleweight limit is anywhere from 155 pounds or anywhere over 154, cutting off at 160. Now, super middleweight is anywhere from over 160 that cuts off at 168. So technically we are seeing Canelo Alvarez as a full-fledged middleweight. His first fight as a full-fledged middleweight, even surpassing the 160-pound limit, into the super middleweight division against a super middleweight fighter in Chavez Jr. So it is significant in that sense, because we get to see what Canelo was made of at a higher weight class. And what better opponent to do that with than Chavez Jr. He's a skilled boxer, don't get me wrong. I know, to the eye he doesn't seem like much, but he does do things very well in the ring. But given his lack of commitment to the sport, in recent times, maybe he has been washed up a bit. Maybe we get to see a brand new Chavez Jr. or a revived Chavez Jr. You know what I'm saying? The fighter that I became a fan of. And then, in addition to what he's capable of doing in the ring, he's a very tough fighter, very hard puncher, you know what I mean? And he's the right kind of fighter to push the limits of someone like Canelo Alvarez, you know what I'm saying? So those are the positives of this fight happening, and, at least that's the way that I'm seeing it. If you're not satisfied with this fight, then I don't know what to tell you. Either you're being like really spoiled about Canelo not fighting Triple G right away. Maybe that's something that you kind of have in the back of your head at all times, so it makes you kind of unsatisfied whenever he announces a fight with somebody else. The same goes when Triple G has a fight with someone else. If you're looking for that fight in particular, you're just gonna keep disappointing yourself. And like I've mentioned in other videos, be happy for the fights that you get, because you're not going to get the fight that you want every time. You're only going to make yourself a more disappointed fan. In a fight like this, I don't see who wouldn't be excited about it, honestly. Even if you don't like who Canelo Alvarez is, or if you got something against him, or if you don't like who Julio Cesar Chavez is, or you got something personal against him, this should still be a fight that you should be excited about, or at least curious. You know what I'm saying? At least curious to see who's going to win, And it does well for, and it's a good fight for not only the American boxing scene, but also it's a good fight for Mexico. You know what I'm saying? Mexico has been pumping out great fighters for a long time, and they've been a very significant country in boxing. And I'm not trying to be biased here, guys. I know you guys know that I'm Mexican, so you probably make the assumption that, well, you're just saying all that shit about Mexico because you're Mexican, and you're going to try to make it some fucking racial controversy. I swear to God, if I see any of that shit, well, we're going to have some words. We're going to be talking about it. You know what I mean? It wouldn't be the first time I got into a conversation like that on YouTube, outside of YouTube. And believe you me, you are going to argue with a motherfucker who doesn't believe in, who doesn't like to even talk about racism. So prepare to be made a fool out of if you even decide to bring that shit up to me. That's just a fair warning. But aside from that, I think it's a very good fight for Mexico because they've contributed to the sport of boxing. Sure, you might have not have liked every fighter that's come out of Mexico. I've not liked every fighter that's come out of Mexico, or is Mexican American, or it comes from some Mexican heritage. But I feel like this is a good fight between two Mexican fighters to give back to their country. You know what I'm saying? It'll do their country proud. So, I feel like it's a good thing. Like Marco Antonio Barrera versus Eric Morales, and they had 3 fights, man. That's 3 fights Mexico can be very proud of, because those were 3 very good fights, very, amazing fights. Some of the, probably one of the best trilogies in boxing's time, at least in my opinion, because it was very competitive between the two, and they were both top fighters at one point. You know what I'm saying? And every time they fought, they went to war. So you got your entertainment out of it. Well, I feel like I can hold this fight in that type of regard. Obviously, I don't feel like these two are of the caliber of what Marco Antonio Barrera and Eric Morales were back when they were in their primes. But, honestly, it could be like the next best thing. Or like De La Hoya versus Chavez Sr., another great showdown between a Mexican-American fighter and a Mexican fighter. So that's why I am happy about this fight being announced. Although once this fight is over and done with, once these two fighters get back on their respectable paths in boxing, I do want to see Canelo fight more top opposition. I do want to see Chavez Jr. get his fucking act together and become that same Chavez Jr. that I became a fan of a while back. You know what I'm saying? So I haven't lost my perspective on the fights that I want to see these guys in their respectable weight classes. But nevertheless, them coming together to put on a great show, I can appreciate that. You know what I'm saying? And I hope everyone else can appreciate that as well. And personally, and if you guys noticed in my videos, I do hype up like every fucking fight. It's not even because I am excited about every fight that happens, some more than others, obviously, but I do try to hype up every fight because I don't want to detract you away from a boxing match. I want you to be excited as well, because I want you to watch a fight and be happy that a fight's going, or be happy that a particular boxing match is going down. I'm not going to talk shit about a fight and then if my video made that much of a difference to you, or made that, played a big role into how you feel about a fight, I don't want you to feel like it's not worth watching. You know what I'm saying? I want to encourage every boxing fan to watch more fights, discover more fighters. I feel like that is what keeps boxing going. You know what I'm saying? If one fan knew 40 fighters that they were a fan of, that's 40 fighters that are a guaranteed viewership. You know what I'm saying? That has a guaranteed fan. The more fans each fighter has, the bigger fights can be made. You know what I'm saying? And the more you appreciate every boxer, or are more excited about every fighter, the more meaningful those fights become to you. You know what I'm saying? And that's the type of, state of mind that I try to keep, because I don't want to turn on boxing one day and I change the channel right halfway through a fight. I don't want to do that. That'll be the day. You know what I'm saying? That'll be the fucking day I stopped this YouTube channel and I stopped talking about boxing and I stopped watching the sport. And I'm pretty sure that day will never come. You know what I mean? So, like I said, be happy that this fight's going to happen. Even if you aren't satisfied with this fight, at least still be curious about who's going to win. Curious enough to that you're going to watch it. You know what I'm saying? But that's pretty much all my thoughts that I have on this fight. Obviously, once we get closer to Cinco De Mayo, I will be making my breakdown and prediction video. I might even, give you guys an early look just at what both fighters are capable of doing inside of the ring and how they fare against each other. And then I'll get into the closer look, you know what I'm saying, once the fight gets a little bit closer to, once it gets closer to that date, and share my thoughts on who I think is going to win. But let me know what you guys think. You know what I'm saying? Let me just your initial thoughts. It don't even have to be about who's gonna win this fight. Just let me know about just share your initial thoughts with me about this fight being announced, and we could talk about it. Also, subscribe to the channel, share this video with your boxing homies, introduce somebody to boxing. More likely this fight is pretty much a must watch. So you introduce somebody to boxing, get them caught up, introduce them to some of your favorite boxers, let them discover more boxers, encourage them to discover more boxers. That way they can be a fight fan by the time this fight happens, and get a little treat on the Cinco de Mayo weekend. But that's all I got for you guys on this one. I will talk to you on the next one. Peace.